you know, some of the hardest audiences we have are those who have heard divine truth before, but who don't understand any of the words as God would understand them to be, right? Because they all have the impression that they know what you're talking about, but they really don't know anything you're talking about at all. And so what that's required of ourselves as teachers is that it's required us to be a lot more direct with everyone about, no, you don't get it, no, you don't get it, and to be more firm about with people that they don't get it, they don't understand.
Hi, well, thanks. I have loved the talks. I've loved them. They're like, seems like it's new and it's different, and I'm hooked.
Why does it seem like it's new and different?
I just love how direct you are. It's like you're so direct and like I wasn't there, but it's like every single question I've been pondering over the last few years was attended. I felt like, even though I wasn't there, you were like talking to me.
Yeah.
And I love that, but I don't know really what humility means, and you didn't get to finish. And I'm just like, I thought I knew.
It was one of the frustrating things we found.
And now probably there's aspects, but there's a lot I don't think I know.
Yeah. One of the things we want to do over the coming months is we want to have discussions about principles in a lot more detail than we've been sort of allowed to at this point by the audiences generally. Because it's important. What we find is when we use a word, such as you use a word like truth, or you use a word like humility, every person has their own interpretation of what that means.
Yep.
And it's really interesting when you try to share truth from a soul level to people who are listening with their head. Because not only are you listening with your head, but you're also listening really with your feelings that are all being tainted by what you believe truth to be or what you believe things to mean. And this comes right from your childhood onwards, doesn't it? Like, you're brought up to think a certain thing means a certain thing, a certain word means a certain word, and so forth. So, and of course, the biggest area where that has an effect is love. For the majority of people, when you talk about love, they think you're talking about meeting people's addictions, or, you know, because they think that's love, or they think that when you love somebody, you just listen to them no matter what they're saying, and even if what they're saying is completely wrong. And the average person has a lot of quite strong definitions of love and truth and humility and faith that are all, from God's perspective, very corrupt definitions. And the problem with the corruption is that it begins in your childhood emotionally. So you could say you have an established set of beliefs internally that are basically defining how you hear everything when those words are used. So when you hear the word love, you're thinking, oh, that's what it means. And when you hear the word truth, you think that's what that means. And when you hear the word humility, you think that's what that means. All based upon your prior experience and your prior knowledge and your prior understanding of all of those things. And so it's really, at times I find it quite difficult to, when we start talking about, say, a quality like humility, a principle, which is really a principle that people must learn themselves to develop. And, you know, you're not gifted humility from the beginning of your existence. It is a quality you're going to need to learn how to develop yourself. And the average person, when you use the word, doesn't really understand what it means at all. And yet, because you've heard the word so much, and particularly when you've been listening to Divine Truth for many years, you've heard us use the word so many times, you start thinking that you know what it means without really knowing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
That's me.
And then then what we find happens is sort of a level of arrogance sort of builds internally, where you think you know what's being talked about. And because there's no emotional opening yet to to the principle or the quality existing within the soul, you think you know, and you hear the word, so you think you know you're applying it, and you think you know how you're applying it, you think it's all working, and you think you got it all down pat, and you don't need to worry about that particular thing. And so when you hear a discussion, and particularly a video discussion, you know, where it's been videoed or something like that, you hear a discussion, you think, oh, I don't need to listen to that because I already know that. And this is where we see a lot of people come into grief with the principles of God's truth, because they think they know things they have no knowledge of at a soul level at all. And it's only a sort of an intellectual understanding of the word, but it's not even the correct understanding of the word, because it's tainted by the history the person has from their emotional experience. May I say?
Yeah, that's me to a T.
Yeah. Well, it's everyone, pretty much everyone. And it's something we really noticed when we were travelling. You know, obviously, you know, some of the hardest audiences we have are those who have heard divine truth before, but who don't understand any of the words as God would understand them to be, right? Because they all have the impression that they know what you're talking about, but they really don't know anything you're talking about at all. And so what that's required of ourselves as teachers is that it's required us to be a lot more direct with everyone about, no, you don't get it, no, you don't get it, and to be more firm about with people that they don't get it, they don't understand.
Well, that's when I realised it's holy moly, like I did the homework with all the audience and everything, and then when you were discussing the homework,
yeah,
that's when I was like, oh my goodness, I went into a bit of a meltdown because it's like, oh my God, I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. And this was what, you know, this was the unfortunate thing with the humility discussion we had in Ireland, so that's what you're referring to. And we got to discuss a lot of things of what it wasn't.
Because the last thing Mary goes, don't look at the board, it doesn't mean you're right.
That's right, yeah. But unfortunately we didn't get to discuss much of what it was. And this is the, you know, a part, I suppose, of your learning too. In a lot of ways you've got to come to understand what things aren't sometimes before you become open to what they are.
Yeah.
And you know, if you don't, if you've already got a fixed idea of what they are inside of you, when from God's perspective that's not what it means, then you can see already if you hear the word, you're already hearing it your way, and therefore not really going to apply it the way God intends you to apply that from a law perspective.
You're not really open in your heart to receiving the actual truth of what it is. And we see this happening a lot with discussions where, in God's way in particular, you're not being humble. Yeah, I know I am being humble. I'm feeling about this or what have you, but it's not humility in practice. It's something, it's an addiction in practice, yeah.
And, you know, we have mentioned in the past, haven't we, about humility as a quality in particular, that it is about being open to feel all of your emotions, whether they're painful or pleasurable. That's only one little aspect of humility. That's not the complete definition of humility, right? Because the definition of humility has to include also your relationship to God. In other words, you know, that you're a created being, not the creator, and that you're a creation of God, and therefore have some respect for God's power and authority. You know, the definition of humility has to include that. It also has to include things like being humble to the principle rather than just your emotions, right?
Or opinion.
Or opinions, yeah.
So the aspect of truth, you know, am I humble enough to recognise that what I define as truth is not God's definition?
Yeah. Yeah, so yes, you know, we want to have more discussions about those things, and Mary and I are trying to get a lot more direct with people about those things too. Of course, not everybody likes that very much. You know, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, who we saw this trip we won't see again as a result. But at the end, it's the best way to teach, because you've got to, when you're teaching something that somebody isn't understanding at a soul level, you've got to get through all of the false definitions the person has before you can before you can sort of have that connection to their soul so they sort of understand what's being said. And that's the difficult thing about teaching divine truth using language or words. It's quite a difficult task, actually, much more difficult than the average person on earth really understands, because of all of these problems we have with language, history, emotions from our childhood, our beliefs, and particularly our false beliefs that we have about all sorts of things. And unfortunately for the majority of people too, the majority of their major false beliefs pertain to principles. And so, you know, a lot of people, when they think about sin, they're thinking about, I harmed this child, or I, screamed and yelled and hit my partner, or, they think of severe things like I stole this, or I had a lot of immorality sexually in my past, and they feel about all those things. But most people don't understand that all of those things are actually less problematic, because they're driven by the principles that are out of harmony with love, which are the highest, they're the things that are going to cause you the most pain and suffering in your future, not having lived a life in harmony with principle. Yeah.
But I think, Deirdre, it's interesting, isn't it, when you've been listening to divine truth for a long time, say, and there's a level of pain that builds up in your life when you think, I'm trying to apply it but it doesn't work, or I'll give up applying it but now my life doesn't feel that good either. And sometimes it's that process of recognising how much pain you're in avoiding humility that begins to open you up to, actually I want to get what this humility thing is. It makes us more humble, even that process. More humble to be able to say, I don't get what humility is. I need to sort of seek it out.
Yeah. So anybody who's helping you, teaching you, so whether they're in the spirit world and they're helping you progress there or helping you here, one of the primary things they need to be able to do is to say, no, you don't get it. No, you don't get it. Just because if they don't tell you what you don't get, then you're going to go around thinking you do get what you don't get.
And that's what you were so direct with in that discussion, like that was like the best one I think I've ever heard. And you were just flapping your arms around, you were like going for it. I thought you were going to take off.
That was when I was talking about being a sin warrior and things like that.
Yes, and then I was like, what's that got to do with humility? What a warrior, what's it?
Yeah. Well, obviously you can see, we talked a bit last week, didn't we, about how if you focus on your sin, how things can get quite negative. But if you focus on principles, you really are dealing with your sin. Because the more you focus on a principle, the more your sin gets addressed. So to my mind, like focusing on the principle is the thing to do. And then you can easily identify your sins when you focus on principles. But when you just focus on sin without understanding principles, then how do you know what a sin actually is? You don't really know, right? And this is one thing we also notice, is a lot of people start focusing on things that are hardly sins at all, or that are very minor sins in comparison to the major ones they're committing, not understanding that they put a lot of effort on that without focusing on the principle. So, we had a discussion in Canada with a group of people about their pets, right? That went on for a couple of hours. And, the reason why that discussion went on for a couple of hours is because nobody there could understand the principles, right, that were behind the discussion. We had another discussion in Belgium about chocolate, and it was the same thing. Nobody could understand the principles behind the discussion. And when you don't understand the principles, then you think things that are minor when they're not, because often they're major, because there's major principles being broken, and so therefore they become major. And then there's other things that are less important, like what you eat, for example. So a lot of people worry about being vegan, but it's the principles that should drive the vegan diet, not the fact that you killing animals or whatever, because what we found overseas, there were many people who were vegan, but they still had pets. Not understanding that those pets, there was a lot of animals dying for the sake of their pets, to feed their pets.
And they're harming their pets through their addiction with the animal, trying to have the animal meet their addiction. So they're actually harming animals, even though
and not only that, they're imprisoning their pets in their homes for life. So it's like, imagine if you were imprisoned in a home for life, you'd feel that to be, in the end, probably a torture, right? And in a lot of ways, they don't understand how much they're even torturing their own pets, right? And many of them are away from their pets all day. Their pets are trapped in a small flat or whatever. They're away from their pets all day. The pet's just there in the one place all day, and the pet sort of pines for some company that entire time. And obviously, when they consider the difference between that and the pet leaving this life and being in the spirit life instead, and they go, I couldn't kill my pet, but you're willing to torture them for the rest of their life. So basic principles are being misunderstood. And so what we find is that in a lot of conversations we're having with people, that the fundamental principles are being completely misapplied, and not only that, applied in sort of harmony with the person's sin. In other words, wherever they feel benefit from hearing divine truth, they'll apply it then. But whenever they feel there's detriment from hearing it, they won't apply it then. Right? And obviously a person who's principled doesn't do that. Yeah. So this is, we will be focusing more and more on two things primarily, principles and sin. And principles are the way to understand sin.
Well, just even with my addiction to be heard, it's like, it's stopping the humility.
Yeah. I said to one group when we were overseas, I can't remember which one, I just said, I don't have to listen to you. Like, why should I listen to you when all you speak is like not true? Why listen? So and also that you've got a demand to be heard, which is actually an addiction, and I can't feed it either. So you add those two things together, why would I listen? Like, I'll listen to God, and I'll listen to anybody who wants to share with me some more of God's truth, that's all fine. But when it comes to just listening for the sake of listening because somebody wants to be heard, what a waste of time. Like, you can spend, like, imagine you're in the spirit world for a moment, and you arrive somewhere in the first sphere, and you want to progress, and somebody comes to you and tries to help you to progress, and all they have to do is spend time listening to you. While they're listening to you, are you progressing? No. You're not progressing, you're not learning anything while they're listening to you. The only time you're progressing is when you're listening to them. And in fact, it's a very important principle to understand that you will not progress unless somebody outside of you shares with you a truth you do not understand. Because if you think you understand everything, you will be exactly where your soul's condition runs, you will be. And in that space, you believe you know everything, right? And one of the reasons why you're there is because you believe that, right? So you believe you know everything, but you're in the first sphere, right? So you're in that space, and many people on earth, many of you are in that space too, where you're in that space where you believe you know everything, believe you understand everything, but the fact is your life is reflective about the fact you don't know, right? So here we are, we're there in that space. When somebody comes along to help you, if all they do is sit down and listen to you, all they're hearing is what you believe to be the truth. And what you believe to be the truth is what has put you in your current space. So is it the truth? It can't be, because otherwise you'd be in a different space, right? And so it's very important to understand that for anybody to progress, you need to have truth come from outside of you. Now, the only way it's going to come from outside of you is about whether you can listen to it or not. And it's not about how much you speak, it's about how much you listen. It's about how much you're able to absorb and understand. And you're not going to, the more you speak, the more you explain it to somebody who's come to help you, the less ability you have to progress. The slower your progress is going to be. So there's very important things to understand about just progression in general. Yeah.